The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I think we start in time. Hello and welcome everyone to the first YOPP Polar Prediction online conference. We are quite happy to see so many of you attending. This meeting should approximately last about 1 hour. In the first circa 20 minutes, Thomas Jung, who chairs the Polar Prediction Project steering group, will be presenting an update of the current status of the year of polar prediction. So where do we stand right now and what are planned and ongoing activities, particularly during the upcoming special observing periods. And then in the second part of the meeting, we would like to give you the opportunity to ask questions, provide feedback to us, and most importantly, let us know if there are any certain issues you need support with. Briefly about the procedure. So before we start the meeting, I would like to briefly let you know how it works. So I hope everyone can hear well and also can see already Thomas' shared screen. If not, please use the chat window below in the GoToWebinar and drop a line to us, to the organizers. So after Thomas will have finished his presentation, if you have a question, you can raise your hand. I hope everyone sees the hand icon, and then we will make you speaking. You can also write your question into the question box below in the GoToWebinar window. And also, I would like to make you aware that we are recording this meeting, so it will be available later from our website. So just before we start, I would like to briefly introduce Thomas Jung. And as I mentioned already, Thomas is the chair of the Polar Prediction Project Steering Group. He's professor for physics of the climate system at the University of Bremen in Germany, and also he leads the climate dynamics section at the Alfred Wegener Institute. So welcome, Thomas. Now I hand over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kirsten, for the introduction, and a warm welcome to everyone to this presentation, this first online discussion related to the year of polar prediction. And I should say perhaps a little bit about the background. I mean, the planning of the year of polar prediction started many years ago, and we did have, regular planning meetings, about, 2 meetings a year. Now, this summer, we realized that actually we don't have any more meetings lined up where we can engage with the community and discuss issues and questions. So the idea was born that, especially given that the first special observing periods in the Arctic are just a few months away, and in the Antarctic, they're almost a bit over a year away, that we establish something like regular online discussions where I give a brief overview of where we are in terms of the planning. And then there is the opportunity to have some discussion, perhaps more discussion than question and answer, where you can ask, issues that you are interested in, but also where you can get us some feedback in terms of what's holding the community back and making YOPP a success. So that's a little bit the background of this. I'm expecting, that participants have a little bit of understanding what the year of polar prediction is about. So I'm not going into too much detail regarding, the background and motivation of all this. What I will be doing, though, is just briefly a reminder of the mission statement. So the goal of the year of polar prediction is to enable significant improvement in environmental prediction capabilities, okay, both for the polar regions, but by doing so, we also think, for regions beyond in mid-latitudes, and all this by coordinating a period of intensive observing, modeling, prediction, verification, user engagement, and education activities. And I will be touching on most of those activities in the next, I don't know, 25 plus minutes. So I think it's really about environmental prediction, so going beyond, just atmospheric weather prediction, and then covering a wide range of timescales from daily all to seasonal and beyond. Okay, I mean, when it comes to introduction, that as far as I would get, and I would just direct you to the website polarprediction.net, where we have lots of brochures and introductory material that you can use in order to get yourself more familiar with YOPP and the details and the motivation behind it. Regarding the timeline, so we have these 3 phases of YOPP, although we usually think of YOPP as the core phase, which will be from mid-2017, or which started in May, basically, to mid-2019. So that's the YOPP core phase. And usually we think of YOPP as the YOPP core phase. But in fact, YOPP is a 10-year undertaking with the preparation phase, which started in 2013, and a consolidation phase, which will start in mid-2020 and end then in 2022. Okay. I will say a few words about the preparation phase and some highlights, spend most of my time on some details of the YOPP core phase, and this time at least I won't be talking a lot about the consolidation phase. So preparation phase, community engagement was very important in the first years, alignment with other planned activities, for example, the plans for the drifting station like Mosaic. I will be coming back to this in a minute. Development of implementation plans, we have done this extensively. Carry out some preparatory research, I will be coming back to this as well. I think lots of papers have emerged, interesting papers in recent years. Education, summer school and workshops, a lot has happened, and I think fundraising and resource mobilization, again, I think the preparation phase has been very successful. Regarding the core phase, which started in May this year, we have these special observing periods, field campaigns, satellite snapshots. We do have a strong modeling component attached to YOPP. Coupled data assimilation plays a role, as well as research into the use and value of forecasts. And there's verification and a summer school, which will be held actually, and I won't be touching on this, in April next year in the north of Sweden, which is the second actually YOPP organized polar prediction summer school. Okay, so that's as much as I want to say about the timeline, and then highlight a few aspects in these 2 left columns in my remaining time here. So selected highlights, preparation phase. I mean, I mentioned community engagement, and presumably the major event was the YOPP Summit that was held about 2 years ago at WMO in Geneva. We had a nice turnout in the middle of summer of 120 participants. I think many of the ideas and many of the things you will be seeing that developed after were developed and emerged at this YOPP Summit. So I think it was really a game-changing event for the planning of the year of polar prediction. I mentioned preparatory research. I mean, I can touch only on the research that came out in recent years, and one of the examples is a special issue on polar prediction that we had in the quarterly journal, which arose from a YOPP organized workshop on polar prediction at ECMWF. That's one example. Another example is interesting work by Jung and colleagues, who basically, the research by Jung and others was really the motivation for some of the ideas that are underlying these special observing periods. So going out in the Arctic and the Antarctic, try to launch additional observations and then carry out so-called observing system experiments. So running forecasts with additional observations and without, to explore the impact that the observations have. And this is the kind of information that is needed in order to provide guidance on the development of the observing system. But there are many more, and again, I invite you to visit polarprediction.net, where you also will be able to find some links as well. One of the things that came out, ideas that came out of the YOPP Summit, was the need for endorsement. So we launched an endorsement process a bit more than a year ago. And the idea was, number one is for us at the International Coordination Office here in Bremerhaven and as a steering group to know what's going on. I mean, who is going to do YOPP-related research and who's going to do what, when, and then have this information in order to make sure that things are very well aligned. So we launched this YOPP endorsement process, and as of the 10th of October, we had a total of 69 endorsements. And in the beginning, we focused on endorsing projects and initiatives, but recently we also added institutional endorsements. And for example, Met Norway or Environment and Climate Change Canada are two institutes that received recent institutional endorsement. And here the point is that they put in lots of in-kind support, and that generates a certain degree of visibility. Now here you see lots of all the YOPP endorsed projects, and so the different symbols indicate whether it's a project or network. Blue, focus on observations, red on modeling, greenish on social sciences. And then we also put them in whether they focus on the Arctic, that's the upper part, focus on the atmosphere, on the ocean here, and or whether they are sort of a mix in the middle. And this helps us also to identify certain gaps. And I think the general picture, of course, is that we have lots of projects, that actually receive funding, and some of them quite sizable amount of funding, like the EU project Applicate, for example, that is funded with a total of 8 million euros for a period of 4 years, and which makes significant contribution to the year of polar prediction. But it also helps us to identify gaps. I mean, if you look, for example, here at this region on this diagram, you see it's the ocean and the Antarctic, the Southern Ocean, and we did have some recent endorsed project, and there's some initiatives and there's some momentum building up, but it certainly was a gap, and it helped us identifying this. So this YOPP endorsement process, and it's just also quite useful from that perspective. And therefore, I would also like to invite everyone who isn't going to get involved in YOPP and hasn't done the endorsement yet to, to go to Polar Prediction Net and have your activity endorsed. So then we have it on the radar, and sort of you are our prime customers to work with, and you get all the necessary information on first hand. Okay. Good. I should also mention, but I will be coming back to this, that we have developed a YOPP Explorer that allows you to get a bit of an idea what's behind those, and but I will be coming back to this later on. Regarding research funding, I mentioned, to give you just 2 examples, we managed to get the year of polar prediction mentioned in Arctic calls that came out in 2016 with a total budget of 40 million euros. And YOPP was mentioned explicitly in the impact part, so that's usually something very, very positive. And there are now 3 projects, European projects running, that are meant to contribute, actually will be contributing to the year of polar prediction. Another example is a call in Canada, MIOPA network, Canadian Research Network, and there was a dedicated call as well for research proposals directed towards the year of polar prediction. Just to give you some example that, in fact, YOPP and the year of polar prediction made it into call text or even dedicated calls. Regarding the launch, I mentioned the YOPP, or more precisely, the YOPP Core phase was launched on the 15th of May 2017 at WMO. It was, I think, quite a nice event. We decided to go to WMO also because many of the member states representatives were there. There's quite a few of them who will actively contribute to YOPP. So we thought it was a good opportunity to engage with those. I think in terms of the media coverage, we were quite happy with the impact of this. So there were coverage in over 25 countries. There were press releases, news articles, and social media, and so forth. And some of you might have seen, that we also launched this video animation, which actually, seen something like 16K views here, which again had quite a bit of an impact on where sort of the rationale of the year of polar prediction was actually described. That was something that was developed together by WMO and the ICO here at the Alfred Wegener Institute. Coming to the YOPP Core phase in the Arctic, and let's have a look sort of how this develops. I mean, here is sort of in slightly different form the timeline I've discussed before. So you see here the end of the preparation phase, here the YOPP Core phase, and here the YOPP consolidation phase. So here we had the launch event in May 2017, and I just briefly want to say how we explain how we think things will unfold. So there will be quite a few modeling activities and prediction activities, and I will be coming back to those in a minute, covering the whole period, the whole 2-year period, and there will be interesting data sets available to the community. I mentioned those special observing periods. There will be one in winter, targeting events such as polar lows, but also, polar lower latitude linkages might be very strong at those time of the year, and there's sea interaction. So it was decided to have one special observing period in the Arctic in winter, and the other one when presumably many stakeholders in the Arctic have interest in forecasts, that is late summer. That is this special observing period 2. And again, sort of there, the goal was to fill the gap in the Arctic observing system as much as possible for a limited period of time. And then with this additional data, carry out experiments that can provide us and inform us about the design of the observing system. Now there are plans for extensive buoy coverage, and therefore to cover these periods, actually buoys needed to be brought out in autumn. I need to say that a critical cruise has been cancelled, the Nabos cruise, because the ship wasn't be able to go into Russian waters, which is a bit of a setback. But we believe that some of the buoys actually can be deployed also, in time for parts at least of the summer special observing period. Then there are field campaigns, and quite a few of those endorsed projects on the previous slide actually are field campaigns, which are more or less scattered about the 2-year period, with some clustering, I suppose, in certain regions. Then there are also extra modeling activities, some of them flanking these field campaigns. And there are also ideas for something like satellite snapshots for certain periods. For example, something like radar information in order to get high-resolution picture of sea ice dynamics in certain parts, certainly covering ideally some of the special observing periods. I should mention that actually, even in the consolidation phase, we are planning, something like a small repetition, if you will, of what has been done in the upcoming SOPs. And the idea is to, take the opportunity of the existence of Mosaic, this drifting station, which will be drifting from Laptev Sea region across the Arctic from 2019, summer 2019 to 2020. And the idea is to extend basically some of the prediction and modeling activities to cover Mosaic as well. Launch another special observing periods, take some of the lessons into account learned from the first SOPs, and also have some extra modeling and satellite snapshots. So basically making sure that, by having this third component, if you will, that Mosaic and YOPP get, that there's a maximum of mutual benefit for both. Regarding Antarctica, very briefly, there will be, I think this is actually not quite true here. I mean, this is should be somewhat shorter. I apologize for this. So the core phase, I mean, the core modeling phase, it's fine. So, I mean, most of the core modeling and prediction activities are actually based on global models. So, the same, data that can be used for the Arctic can also be used for the Antarctic. Then the community agreed that the special observing periods will be starting on the beginning of November 2018 and running for the southern summer, for the Austral summer season. Okay, from November to February 1820. Okay, and then again we have our field campaigns, we have modeling activities, and we have snapshots. So this is the timeline of things. Okay. So some elements here, I mean, we have launched a draft version of the YOPP Data portal, and the idea is that, all or most of the data that are generated in the context of the year of polar prediction will be made available through this YOPP Data portal. And so I think some progress is needed in this area, but I mean, if you have data, that you would like to make available through that portal, please contact either me or Kirsten, and then we can get you into contact with the organizers of the YOPP Data portal. But that is still work in progress, and that needs certain attention in the coming months. Then I mentioned there's a strong YOPP verification component attached, and I would like to make advertisement for the report here on verification of environmental prediction in polar regions, recommendations for the year of polar prediction. There are some ideas on what would be needed and what is special and needs to be considered when you do verification. There is also an important part which I also very much like, that is the idea of some diagnostic verification. So the verification community has identified certain super sites, where we have very good observations, for example, Ny-Ålesund in Svalbard. And then the modelers are asked to produce high frequency, high resolution model output for those stations, so that the community has really sort of observation and model data for those points and can really check the quality of models and provide feedback to the model developers. So you can call this diagnostic verification, and the ideas are outlined in this report as well. I mentioned that there is a social economic research application component to this, and just this week we published the report entitled Navigating Weather, Water, Ice and Climate Information for Safe Polar Mobilities. And again, this is available on the website polarprediction.net, and the purpose of this report is here. It aims to explore how weather, water, ice and climate information is currently being used and produced in the polar regions, by whom and for what reason. So it's giving an overview of actually the stakeholders, both in terms of using, but also in terms of producing forecast information. And the report then also importantly identifies, frames and articulates important areas of research related to the use and provision of environmental prediction services that should be prioritized and further developed during and beyond the year of polar prediction. So it's a bit like an outline and a proposal for foci in this important area for the YOPP Core phase, but also importantly for the consolidation phase. An interesting thing I would like to make advertisement for as well, and is related to this CERA activity, is this new online user feedback platform called Polar Prediction Matters. And you can see the link down here as part of the Helmholtz website here. And here the idea is that this platform, we sort of key stakeholders and experienced people, like here the captain of the research vessel Polarstern, Uwe Pahl, he describes his experience and what he thinks are the needs of certain stakeholders when it comes to environmental forecast or prediction information. And then this platform allows the users to engage with forecast providers, but also other users, in order to see what's relevant and what's critical. And we just recently had the second article on this, and I would like to invite everyone to read this carefully and provide your feedback and engage in the discussion. I mentioned that, and I think a very strong part in the planning is currently our modeling activities. So I believe there will be lots of modeling work taking place in the year of polar prediction. And currently we are finalizing a plan for this, the YOPP modeling plan, the first edition as we call it, and it's currently in press. And once it's available, again, it will be a news item to the website, and all those of you who are subscribed to Polar Prediction to our mailing list, you will get the information and notifications straight away. Just to give you an example, for example, a first example here, ECNWF has decided to provide a special data set for the year of polar prediction, and that's something that is also funded by the Horizon 2020 project Applicate that I happen to coordinate. And what ECNWF is providing is high-resolution forecasts of their operational forecasting system that is well known for its quality, and that will be available also in coupled mode, so atmosphere, sea, ice, ocean. And this will be available, daily, every day. There will be high-resolution forecast on all the model levels provided to the community with a delay of 1 or 2 days only. Interestingly also, it's not just standard parameters normally available, but the users and scientists have also access to process tendency, for example, that allows you to determine, I mean, what's the impact of, say, turbulence in the boundary layer on the temperature tendency, so that you can really, do a bit of, interesting process study in these virtual field campaigns, if you will. And here you can see a link where the data are available. So I think it's a unique data set. It can be used, it's global, it can be used in the Arctic and for the Antarctic, but it can also be used and actually will be used for tropical questions as well. So, I mean, there's certainly some cross-cutting activities and interests here as well. I would also like to point out that, for example, Environment and Climate Change Canada, they are also providing a special YOPP data sets, using both providing data for regional setups, but also for global setups and for ensembles and for seasonal predictions. And all this is available through the World Mapping Service and also through the YOPP Data portal. And again, I think that is a very nice data set. It's a coupled regional models and global models here in the Arctic, and I think we are talking here about really unique data set that can be used by senior scientists as well as master students and PhD students to further our understanding. I should mention that there are other contributions as well, that Norway is contributing Météo France and others. So these YOPP data sets, they are growing and is ever increasing. So there should be wealth of data available. I mentioned briefly the YOPP Explorer. So you have seen we have something like 69 endorsed projects at the moment, and WMO primarily, and together with the ICO, that we developed an interface, if you will, that allows you for the Arctic or the Antarctic, to click at certain projects and then get in a user-friendly way, give some information to sort of what people are going to do when, and who are the PIs. And so forth. So, I mean, if you would like to get an overview of, what are the different projects, endorsed projects doing, I would like to invite you to use the YOPP Explorer in order to ease your life. Okay. Another recent development, which should be helpful both for, the ICO and the steering group, but also I think as for the community as a whole, is the YOPP Google Earth layer that has been developed by Winfried Hoke from the ICO. And the idea is that on this surface here, you will be able to see for the different special observing periods, for example, for the special observing period, the winter one in the Northern Hemisphere, or the summer one in the Northern Hemisphere, or the summer one in the Antarctic, to see, what type of observations here, you say radio sondes, here automatic weather stations, here buoys, airborne activities, that allows you to give a bit of an overview of, what's planned, what is actually scheduled and agreed, what is still under discussion and not shown here, but what is available anyway. Okay, so I invite everyone to download the KMZ file, and that allows you to play with this. And I think it's very self-explanatory. You may wonder what these big S's are here. These are the YOPP super sites, and these are sites where we have extremely good observations. Okay, like for example, I mentioned Ny-Ålesund in Svalbard, and where we ask all the modeling centers to provide high-resolution model output as well, and provide this to the community, so that that everyone can really look at the quality of models in these sites where we have a wealth of observations. So you've seen we have identified quite a few, and there are more here on the Southern Hemisphere. You might see some S's here, and they are actually over Tibet. And so WMO, certainly when it comes to polar prediction, there is an interest in also the third pole, the Tibetan plateau. So we ask also the modeling communities to provide, at some super sites, their information, just to provide the community also with some input. So that seemed like low-hanging and fruit that is of quite some relevance. Now here's then a snapshot for the Antarctic, and I think what I should be saying is the Antarctic planning of the special observing periods has been a bit of a surprise, I think, and those of you who attended the YOPP Summit, you might have thought, well, the Arctic, obvious, lots of funding available, and it was clear that the Arctic will be flying. However, at the beginning of the YOPP Summit, it was less clear for the Antarctic, but then some dynamic developed that people realized, actually, oh yeah, there are quite a few commitments people willing to make, and I think that since then the planning of the Southern Hemisphere component of YOPP really took off, and given the logistical difficulties in organizing in something in the Southern Hemisphere, I think the level of commitment and extra observations we will be seeing during the special observing period, I think it's likely to be excellent, if not outstanding. Regarding YOPP communication, very important, and we keep it up to date, is our Polar Prediction website, polarprediction.net, and I really would like to ask you to look through this. I mean, you get, I guess, most of the information you need, and if something is missing, please feel free to contact us. You can also follow us on Twitter to get some recent information. Some of you may have seen, we launched Polar Prediction News, a newsletter. Recently we published the 3rd version. We are currently in the process of finishing the 4th one, where you also get up-to-date information, in a written form. And it sort of augments nicely this online discussion, but it's more one way, we informing you, and I guess here it's also very important that you have the opportunity to ask us questions and comment. Okay, and then we have plenty of plans. I've indicated this already: verification, societal and economic research applications, and so forth, and brochures as well. And there's a mailing list. I guess most of you have subscribed to this, which I think received very good attention with more than 530 subscriptions. Now, I mentioned, and I think YOPP, the year of polar prediction, has been the planning thus far has been a story of success. I should say, though, we also had some recent drawbacks. I mentioned the cancellation of the Narbos cruise. That was a bit of a setback for the buoy program, for the Arctic buoy program. But I think we are optimistic that perhaps we can make up for this in the summer period. It's also, for some countries, it's not quite clear yet what kind of commitment actually will be possible. So, I mean, that's something to follow on and keep an eye on. Okay. But I should also mention that certainly work in progress is also the satellite component of the year of polar prediction. We did have our steering group meeting in spring, and we really sort of came up with a list of what we would like to have, the requirements from the satellite community. And then we are working on, coordinating with the satellite community through the Polar Space Task Group, and we sent them our requirements, and those lists are currently with them, and we are awaiting feedback from them as well. And certainly, the YOPP data portal is, I mean, I think everything is in place there, but what needs to be done is we need to really kickstart the discussion with the community when it comes to, agreeing on certain standards and ensure that things are interoperable. Okay. So I don't want to hide those. I mean, there are certainly some challenges, which I guess, given the scale of the thing, is maybe not surprising. Okay. So in summary, and I don't want to go into detail here, but I think we are on good course. So the special observing period, the winter one for the Arctic, is just, I don't know, something like 4 months away. So it's really imminent. And so it's very important that, that regularly we discuss with the community, and I guess that's one of the main motivations of having this online discussion forum here. So I think in many regards we are on a good way. In that regard, of course, we are looking forward to hear your feedback, how you perceive things. But it's also fair to say, and I mentioned that in my last slide, that there are some challenges, and where we may perhaps need to work also together to overcome those. And I think with this, I stop and leave the remaining, 20 minutes or so for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for this nice update. So are there any questions? please either raise your hand or type in the question into the question box. Okay, for raising your hand, you just need to click on the button with a hand.
To give you some time, if you like to put in some question to give you a bit of time. What I would like to say is, before I forget this, I mean, in terms of this is our first online discussion, and I think we would also like, I mean, we are planning to have another one, I don't know, in 6 to 8 weeks from today. So, you know, given the current outline in the presentation, we would be really interested in getting your feedback for the next online discussion. If there's anything you would like to see, you were thinking is missing, or you know, any specific information you would like to have. So I would like to invite you, even though some of you may not ask a question here tonight, provide us with some feedback in order for us to sharpen here the whole concept.
Okay, there is one question by Stella Melo. So she's asking, would we have a paper on observation like we are having on the model?
The question, I guess, is whether we have something like a modeling document, like something like a plan, you know, like we have for verification and so forth. Is that the question?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. So I think the answer is, in fact, I think the answer is no. Interesting. It's a good point. I have to say. Having said that, I don't think we are completely without plan. I mean, we have the YOPP implementation plan, and I think in the YOPP implementation plan, which is not an old document actually, I think it was published about a year ago. Quite a few of these the elements are laid out. Okay. But I think it's a good point. It's a good question. I mean, to a certain degree, you know, we presumably didn't produce, when it comes to the observation, we didn't really invest time in writing a plan, but we invested in, you know, developing the YOPP Explorer. We invested in developing the Google interface, you know, which I guess helped people to get an overview of what's happening. But I mean, if people think that, you know, something like a concise plan or something that is needed, then I will be very much looking forward to your feedback. We need to keep in mind, of course, though, that that the first special observing periods is just 4 months away, so we would have a relatively short timeline in order to produce something. But it might not be too difficult, given that, you know, that we have a document available in form of the YOPP implementation plan. So I hope this answers the question. So the answer is, in short, no, we don't have a dedicated plan, a separate dedicated plan, but I think we have, you know, good material, and we have the YOPP implementation plan, which I guess is a good baseline. Okay, thank you, Thomas. So Matthew Druckenmiller asked, are you still accepting requests for endorsements? Do you see yet that these endorsements are beneficial to in both directions? Yes, absolutely. I mean, we are still looking for endorsements. Absolutely. It's, you know, some of the projects may, you know, the special observing periods may be 4 months away, but you know, I think the consolidation phase will be very critical as well. I mean, YOPP, really, we shouldn't be thinking of this stopping in mid-2019. And you know, if you carry out field campaigns, something like in next summer, say, you know, if people have the information around there, you know, these data will be available, you know, when they do their synthesis, sometimes in 2020. I think then having the information of all the projects that provided relevant data is absolutely critical. So I mean, certainly from, you know, from our side, in knowing who is going to do what, and who provided what kind of information that could be used and harvested by others, I think it is still absolutely important to have YOPP endorsement. Whether it is beneficial for those writing proposals, that's of course difficult to answer. It may depend on the individual case, but I think the answer is yes. Keep proposals coming, and I think Also, it is fair to say that lots of requests for endorsement are actually coming in. We didn't really see a major drop in the number of requests coming in. So I think also, well, certainly telling you a little bit that people think it's still useful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So Paul Pestio from Environment and Climate Change Canada asked, I see the objective verification covered, but was wondering about expectations for subjective evaluations from users such as forecasters to, I don't know what this is, to lag usefulness of models. Yeah. I believe this is an objective of YOPP.
Yes, I think it's very important, you know, I mean, to get feedback from those who, you know, who use and provide, you know, information, predictive information on a daily basis. And I mean, I used to work at ECMWF for 10 years. And there's a dedicated group who is sort of every day is looking at the quality of forecasts, and you know, and it's quite often that they noticed that something is, you know, going wrong with the forecast, or even, you know, when there was a dropout of certain data, you know, the forecast deteriorated, and those people were, you know, quite effective in spotting things. And I think, you know, conversely, you might think that that, you know, if you add certain observations there, that's certainly something, you know, if the quality of forecast increases, I guess, you know, significantly, I guess really forecast providers would be one of the first in realizing this. And so I clearly see scope. I remember there was also discussion of organizing this. I don't know from the top of my head now where we are in terms of this. I don't know whether Helge or anyone else can comment, but I mean, certainly it's a steering group meeting back in spring. That's something that we certainly discussed. So making you know, the forecast providers aware of YOPP, making them aware of the special observing periods, and then perhaps, you know, through the CIRA committee also interviewing them and, you know, asking them what their experience is, I think is an important part. So it's not just objective, but I think subjective verification is very important as well.
Okay, thank you. Then we have another question by Jung Dongji. May I know when is the deadline to submit the plan? What plan do you mean, Jung? Maybe you can type in some more detail.
Endorsement request.
Do you mean the endorsement request?
Well, if it's the endorsement request, we are taking, you know, endorsements 24/7, you know, so as they come in regarding the endorsement process, usually it just takes a couple of days or so. And then, you know, here at the ICO, we pick two members of the PPP steering group who are going to review then the request. And usually they ask for some, you know, for some amendments and perhaps some revisions. And then, you know, the opponent then gets feedback, and usually, you know, if it is all very clear cut, the whole thing, you know, works within something like a time frame of 2 to 3 weeks. But I mean, there's no deadline for requests. I memean, if you have something and you would like to have it endorsed, you can submit it at any time.
Okay, so there's clarification now. So Jung typed in, so it is about the Arctic radio sounding plan of China.
Yes. I mean, I think having this plan, I mean, I think there it would be very important that you contact us, I mean, Kirsten and myself and Helge in the ICO directly. And here it's absolutely clear, the earlier, the better, okay? So that we know whether there are certain gaps, and also because sometimes we have questions, you know, I mean, if you can provide this early, it helps us, because, you know, sometimes countries come to us and say, you know, okay, you know, we can provide extra launches at, say, 2 stations. Please give us advice where to put our launches. Now, if there is already a country or a ship or something somewhere nearby, and you have different options, you ideally would like to avoid having extra radiosondes very close to each other. For example, 2 extra launches from Ny-Ålesund might not be that interesting. So therefore, I mean, if you know that you can make certain commitments, let us know. And you can even say, okay, well, we know those are commitments and perhaps we have question marks with others. That's information that is very important, and we can incorporate this also in our Google Earth layer. And I think it's very helpful when it comes to decision making. But in principle, of course, if for some logistical reasons, I mean, you can make a decision only, I don't know, on the 15th of January, so 2 weeks before the start of the first special observing periods, then of course nothing should be holding you back from putting it in. Just let us know, so that later on, when we carry out the data denial experiments, we really know what are the extra observations that came in through the year of polar prediction, so that at some stage in the consolidation phase, we can also decide sort of what is the difference that YOPP actually made. Okay. So therefore, we should be knowing what happened because of YOPP that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Okay.
Okay, so Jung commented, okay, we are planning and will submit as soon as possible.
Excellent.
Okay. Another question from Paul Pestio. So could the Polar Prediction Matters blog be appropriate to share interesting cases for further study and investigation close to real time?
I don't know whether it's in this scope, but I mean, it's certainly some interesting thought, and we could give it a go. I mean, I think Paul presumably would mean some interesting cases that emerged during the special observing period. Perhaps it's an interesting idea, that we can perhaps identify for the special observing periods, that we can identify some key stakeholders that identify interesting cases and that we develop a discussion about those. I think it's an interesting idea, given that that this is sort of organized, and sort of the contributions to this platform, that it's organized by us. I think we will be thinking about this and giving it a thought. I mean, in principle, I like the idea.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Are there any other questions? Seems not to be the case. Yeah, oh, there's another one. So yeah, this question is by Joel Severino. So considering the high risk of delay due to bad weather and ice conditions for Antarctic experiments, if an experiment is postponed for a year, how should the real-time data generated be managed?
Yes, I mean, I guess quite a few of the extra observations that will be taken are coming actually from automatic weather stations, and for example, Neumeier Station, they will be carrying out extra launches. So I think quite a sizable amount of the extra observations will be not depending so much on bad weather. It might be slightly different for some of the activities, but in principle, I think it's fair to say that it would be very good to put all the data onto the GTS, the Global Telecommunication System, or on the WMO Information System, the WIS. So then you make sure that they will come automatically into the operational centers, and they will be picked up. And if you let us know that these are YOPP dedicated extra observations, then we can keep track of those. And when dedicated experiments take place, we can take care of those. I should also say that we do have actually sort of mini special observing periods outside of those well-defined SOPs. For example, there is, I think in December, there is a major Japanese contribution by Yun Inoue and colleagues, who for logistical reasons couldn't really move their things into the special observing periods. And still, it's very useful data, and there will be dedicated experiments carried out for those mini SOPs, if you will, as well. So, lots of things and useful things will actually happen outside of those special observing periods. And if you make sure that somehow the data go through the YOPP data portal, and that the GTS knows, I mean, if possible, they go into the global telecommunication system, I think a legacy and a contribution to YOPP is actually ensured.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, there's one hand raised. Christophe Genton, so I make you speaking now. Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering whether it was possible to elaborate on the role of the satellites for YOPP in general, and particularly for the special observed periods, because those polar regions are very difficult to make measurements, generally speaking, and obviously satellites are going to provide very important information to improve our ability to make better predictions. Is there any particular plan for better use of satellites?
Yes, I mean, I think regarding the satellite component, I mean, I mentioned briefly that currently the ball is in the in the field of the Polar Space Task Group. I mean, we were asking them for for certain things that are relevant to forecasts. When it comes, for example, to developing, improving sea ice rheologies, it would be very nice to have information about sea ice deformation. And and I think it will be absolutely critical when it comes to these technical decision making, and sort of having certain snapshots during ideally special observing periods, if it's possible, of having a pan-Arctic view of high resolution fields on deformation would be absolutely smashing to have. I mean, that's something currently the Polar Space Task Group is checking. We have been in discussion with them for quite some time. What they also want to do is, I mean, we sent them a list what we would like to have, a bit of a wish list. What they also want to do is, and provide to the community, is something like a list of links, to important products and data sets that are actually already there, and that can be used and exploited. So you can call this low-hanging fruit. That is a certain element as well that we are working on. At some stage, we were thinking also perhaps trying sort of new and innovative things like these small micro satellites, and I mean, it's certainly something some people had an interest in, but at the moment I don't see a champion taking this on. And driving this forward. So I mean, trying perhaps whether some sort of commercial micro satellites could actually be an important additional component to this. I think very charming idea and worth trying out, but I don't see anyone who put in a proposal or has the in-kind resources of doing this at this stage. That's also one of the reasons why I said that I'm a little bit in terms of the satellite component, presumably we are lacking behind a little bit, I would think, but I mean, I think when it comes to using satellite data, there's also when I was talking to people from the Polar Space Task Group, they were also saying, and I think they're right in some sense, that there's also some work to be done for the prediction community, to digest the information that is there. For example, we would need proper coupled data assimilation systems to make sure that we can use ice thickness data and the concentration and information about the ocean. And I mean, these coupled data assimilations, so merging observations in situ, but as well as satellite observations and models, is certainly an emerging field. Okay. So, but I think it is fair to say, that this is sort of there's work in progress, and we are also looking in this field for champions, moving this forward. So if I would look, for example, for the endorsed projects in detail, I don't think I would find many would actually deal with satellite data. Okay, that's fair to say.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christoph. So another question by Stella Melo. ESA Aeolus will be launched in May 2018. So
Yes.
winds from space. Maybe if the launch is confirmed, the YOPP team could contribute to evaluation of data.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in principle, this instrument could be a game changer, you know, for Arctic weather, but also, you know, longer term prediction. And I think if this goes ahead, then absolutely, you know, in terms of studying the impact that these extra data have on prediction skill, is it really a game changer? Also in terms of evaluating, you know, the products, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a very good comment, and I think we should be also sort of looking into our direction, Kirsten. You know, make sure that we have this mission on our radar and are constantly updated on this, and also, you know, make sure that once then we have an idea when the data are available and what form, that we inform the community. So I think that's a very good suggestion that we didn't really have on as much, I mean, implicitly, but not explicitly on our radar. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Seems not to be the case. Christoph, you still raised your hand, but I think that's from the conversation.
No, I didn't do it on purpose. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. So you don't have any other question?
No.
Okay. Okay, so I think no more questions. So then I would thank you very much, Thomas, and thank you everyone for participating in the first YOPP online conference. And yeah, if you have any other question, you can send us an email to the email address office@polarprediction.net. And yeah, hopefully see you at the next conference then.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. It was a very interesting and useful, and I appreciate your time and I appreciate your contributions. Thank you.